On August 15, 1915, 33 years after Charles Darwin died, an elderly woman by the name of Lady Hope went on record stating that she and Darwin had become friendly shortly before his death. During the time they spent together, she claimed that Darwin not only became a fervent reader of the Bible, but that he also accepted Jesus Christ as his savior and shared doubts over his theory of natural selection. As one might suspect, this story spread like wildfire throughout the fundamentalist communities. Even after Darwin's son and daughter accused Lady Hope of spreading falsehoods and even doubted whether Lady Hope had even once met their father, the story kept growing and growing and growing that some creationists still make these claims to this day, regardless of the evidence that Lady Hope was nothing more than a fraud. Does it matter to these people that Charles Darwin's personal opinion wouldn't affect the validity of evolution even if the story were true? Of course not. If it might get them an inch, they'll take it, by any means necessary. And this is just one of the more famous examples which demonstrate the most common methods used by creationists: lies, distortions, and deceits. And for a current example of this sort of miscreancy, there's almost no better place than the YouTube channel known as TheAtheistAntidote, run by the biblical literalist and pseudo-musician Brok Lawry. In a recent video, Mr. Lawley listed 8 accounts of frauds committed in the name of evolution, which are as follows: the Ida fossil, Piltdown Man, the Urey-Miller experiment, recapitulation theory, Nebraska Man, Archaeoraptor, deceptive reconstructions, and the Otto-Benga incident. It's already well known that Brok Lawry is an unapologetic plagiarist, and this video of Mr. Lawley's is no exception. But plagiarism isn't the only way in which Mr. Lawley is dishonest. In an original version of his video, Lawley had this to say about the Ida fossil, which was the only claim of fraud in which he went into any detail explaining.
Remember a few months back, Ida, the fossil that was propped up with a lot more money than scientific fact? Well, turns out it's a little closer to Garfield than the evolutionists would care to admit. Turns out we were looking at a feline, some version of a Flintstone pussycat.
As it turns out, Lawley's claim that Ida is a feline is either calculated dishonesty or evidence that he doesn't do any research before he records his videos, as the source he provides clearly states that Ida is only cat-like in size. But to Brok's credit, he removed the original and reposted the video without the obvious error. Unfortunately, the rest of his falsehoods remained intact. For one, Ida was never universally accepted among experts as a human ancestor. Even the creationists' #1 enemy, Richard Dawkins, expressed skepticism of Ida's ancestry in his recent book, The Greatest Show on Earth. To the contrary, he denounced the media hype surrounding the fossil, perhaps due to the fact that creationists such as Lawley often dishonestly and incorrectly attribute the mistakes of the media to mainstream science. Such is his claim that Nebraska Man was a fraud committed in the name of evolution. In truth, the evidence for Nebraska Man, a single decayed tooth which turned out to be that of a pig, was never accepted by mainstream science. And the fanciful artwork which creationists often trot out in order to display deceptive reconstructions was never published in a peer-reviewed journal, but was commissioned by a pop magazine. And since Mr. Lawley gives no examples of deceptive reconstruction, perhaps we can use this opportunity to cross that one off the list. Archaeoraptor was a fraud, though again it was never accepted by mainstream science and was dubbed a fake immediately. The Urey-Miller experiment, on the other hand, was not a fraud. Miller's experimental procedure has been repeated and confirmed over and over by independent sources. Furthermore, the experiment has very little to do with evolution and more to do with organic chemistry and abiogenesis. Similarly, recapitulation theory, or biogenetic law, has little to do with Darwinian evolution. While Ernst Haeckel, the champion of recapitulation theory, clearly respected and admired Darwin's work, his ideas of embryology were hinged on the Lamarckian principle of higher and lower species, a concept which runs contrary to our understanding of how evolution works. The Otto-Benga incident was a terrible chapter in American history, in which a Congolese pygmy was taken from his homeland and placed in the Bronx Zoo as an exhibit. Creationists often use this incident to claim that evolution leads to racism, but in reality this incident had little or nothing to do with biological evolution. Even Samuel Phillips Werner, the man who took Otto-Benga from his home and brought him to the zoo, writes in his book, quote, "These pygmies are human beings in every sense of the word. The data corroborating this opinion are physical, psychological, and ethnical." Werner, who was an ardent missionary, instead thought less of the pygmies because of their unwillingness to adopt Christianity. As for Piltdown Man, this is the only fraudulent fossil that fooled mainstream science all the way back in 1912. It was finally debunked in the 50s after new dating methods were made available. Dating methods, by the way, which young Earth creationists like Brok Lawry don't accept to begin with. So there you have it. Out of 8 claims, only one turned out to be a fraud that fooled mainstream science. Of course, Mr. Lawley makes no mention whatsoever of the dozens of legitimate transitional hominid fossils, either because he desires to hide the fact that they exist, or possibly because he has never done any research on the subject of human evolution. But why should he know about evolution? He has absolutely no desire to learn about any of the sciences which contradict his religious beliefs. So perhaps somebody can explain. Because Brok Lawry has shown himself to be either intentionally dishonest or willingly ignorant, why should anybody trust his opinion on anything?